One of the last topics to discuss in the entire section, Making Decisions and Forming Judgments, is the issue of framing. The way that we frame something very much impacts the decision we end up making. Framing is defined as the way an issue is posed. How an issue is framed can significantly affect decisions and judgments. So I just have a couple of examples of framing. It's something I think y'all are hopefully familiar with. You just might not have known that it actually has a name, and the name is framing. So, first example your book kind of talks about is, let's say you've been told that exposure to a certain chemical is going to possibly pose some sort of danger. You can be told this information in one of two ways. You can be told that 10 out of 10 million people will die as a result of exposure to this chemical, versus being told that there is a 1 millionth chance that you will die as a result of exposure to this chemical. Now, probably not surprisingly, more people tend to be scared of this statistic right here, and they would rather be exposed to a chemical that they only have 1 millionth of a chance of dying if exposed to it. Now, hopefully you are good enough at math to know that these two statistics are saying the exact same thing. The difference is that when you hear that 10 out of 10 million, you immediately start picturing 10 actual people who have died as a result of exposure to that chemical. Even though statistically the numbers are the same, they don't feel the same when we actually hear them. All right, another example. This one is when you're being told by a doctor about a treatment. Maybe you're being told about a radiation treatment for a cancer. You can be told that there is a 68% chance that you will live through this treatment versus a 32% chance you will die during this treatment. Again, probably not surprisingly, way more people will opt into the procedure if they're told there is a 68% chance of life. So this is something doctors have to be very cognizant of, and they need to be sure that when they are gaining informed consent for some sort of procedure, that they are presenting the information in both ways. Third example. There are currently two kind of systems for getting people to agree to be organ donors around the world. And so the systems that are used vary country to country. Here in the United States, the type of system that we tend to use is based on an opt-in. So the default is you are not an organ donor, and if you decide you want to be one, then you just check the box and it gets added to your license. Now, in some other countries like Spain, they go by what is known as more of an opt-out system, meaning the default is you're signed up to be an organ donor, and then if you decide you don't want to be, you have to check the box and actually opt out of it. Now, in comparing rates of people who are organ donors in countries like this, what we find is there is a close to 100% rate of organ donation in countries like Spain, as opposed to only a 25% rate of organ donors in countries like the US. So when you have to opt in, you are much less likely to do so, as opposed to if it's the default, you're already a donor, you're very rarely going to opt out of that. The end product is the same, but the way it is framed and the way it is presented very much changes people's decisions. Another example, again, something which is more of a serious topic, especially here in a Catholic school, a lot of times we talk about being pro-life. Well, as I'm sure you've noticed, the vocabulary to discuss the two sides of this argument are both framed very particularly. You have the idea of being pro-life versus the idea of being pro-choice. Neither side would ever want to define themselves as something that is less than a pro. You don't oftentimes see it presented as anti-choice, or the flip side, you are certainly not going to see someone present themselves as being anti-life. So framing here is very important for the way that people are going to support their cause. Finally, to end on kind of a lighter note, I suppose, we have the issue of framing as you can see it in a lot of different retail locations. Anytime you walk into a store, you see all sorts of signs about things being on sale, and you think to yourself, man, I'm just lucky, like I got here and everything's just on sale. I have a friend who, when she goes shopping, the first thing she does when she gets back to her house is she wants to tell everyone exactly how much money she saved. She doesn't want to focus on how much she spent, she wants to focus on how much she saves. And that's the whole point of using signs like this. Stores want you to be focusing on what you're saving as opposed to what you're spending. I worked in retail for a really long time. I'm sure a lot of y'all work in retail. And you know that There are times when items come into the store, it's the first day that they're in the store, and they immediately go on sale. The intent is never to sell them at, quote, full price. They're always being sold at a sale price because that's the price that the company actually wants them to be sold at. So they mark them up so they can immediately mark them down and get customers to think that they're actually saving money.